Hi, welcome to one more preview video. This time I'm going to present to you how the game Eter plays. The game is all about two opposing mages, so they're trying to send their minions on the battlefield, trying to win battles in order to win the game. The game takes the DNA of tic-tac-toe, which is very simple and everybody knows how to play tic-tac-toe, and builds on that to give a very interesting take on the genre. This is an abstract strategy game with a pattern building, pattern recognition, zone control, and it has 4 different modes. So this is interesting because you can play it as a training mode, which is very interesting also to play with a child or a younger player. Then you can also play the normal dueling mage mode, you can play the elemental battles, or you can play a tournament. And all these different modes build on, let's say, the basic design, the basic framework, and they provide more options, more abilities. Even in the tournament, it has a very interesting in parallel game together with the main game, so it brings a lot of tension and a lot of strategy. So what this is all about: players take the roles of 2 different opposing mages, as I said. They send the minions by playing cards from their battle decks, from values from 1 to 4 on the different area of the play. So you can play either a 3x3 grid or a 4x4 grid if you're playing everything but the training mode. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make a line of 3 or 4 if you're playing the training mode, anything else but the training mode, cards in a row, or horizontal, vertical or diagonal from your own color. You're going to say, okay, but this is very simple, so it's just basically like tic-tac-toe. No, because here comes the interesting part. You play cards of your own color, so your color matters no matter the value, if you make 4 in a line or 3 in a line, depending if you're playing which mode you're playing. But you're also playing values, and you can cover either your opponent or your own cards with values higher than your own. So if I play a 2 on top of a 1, I can cover my opponent's card. So this now starts and brings tension and interest, because you have a specific deck of combat cards, so you have to make best use of them. You also have to outsmart your opponent, so placing also takes, you know, the cunning, let's say, of the tic-tac-toe, but on top of that it builds the strategy layer of and the decision making of which combat cards sent at which timing to which spot. Extremely simple, very simple to teach, very simple to learn, but then around this basic concept it starts building the elemental powers if you're playing the elemental battle, the mage powers if you're playing the mage battle, or the even more interesting, in my opinion, tournament mode, where you play 4 games. Whoever wins most in 5 games, wins. But what happens is the very last card that you play in your 4x4 grid, the winning card, let's say, dictates where you're going to place on another separate 4x4 grid one of your tokens in your color. So on the second, let's say, battlefield, you're trying to make in the battlefield arena 3 in a row again. So you want to win, but also you want to win with a specific card in a specific place. So this is very interesting. Again, very simple, but all the abilities bring a lot of variability, a lot of replayability in the game, a lot of interesting options and decisions. And on top of that, you have also the power explosion and one more mode, which brings essentially an element of playing a card hidden, which is important, because if you play card hidden, that means that the opponent does not know what they're going to find until they attack you. The power explosion is also interesting because it has a special deck of cards, and once you activate this, the person who makes 2 lines in a row, then they activate the power explosion from the top of the deck, and this can manipulate the battlefield and make a lot of things. So simple at its core, very interesting in all of the modes, easy and accessible for a lot of different types of players and let's say level of gamers. Also from very junior and small children to players and gamers in heart. So I think it's a game that it offers a lot of interesting decisions on a very fast play, using something which is very well known to most of us, which is the tic-tac-toe mechanism, but builds on that, giving a lot of spice and a lot of interest to make it an excellent 2-player game with fast pace, interesting decisions, very quick back and forth, and a lot of things to discover, because depending on the mode you play, it's different. Depending on the abilities you add, is different. Depending from play to play, which cards you encounter for the special abilities and what cards you use, also makes it different. Even the 2 modes which can be played in the 2 special plays, let's say, which can be played in every of the 4 modes, like the power explosion, are very interesting, because it really brings a lot of different experience depending on what you do each time. So join me at the table. I'll show you how the game plays. I'll show you in practice all the details. I'm going to add a link in the description of the video on the crowdfunding Kickstarter campaign page for the game, so you can follow it up when it launches and you can find out more for yourself. But this is, I think, a keeper for 2 players. If you like fast, quick, back and forth 2-player games with a lot of interesting choices, but simple rules, I think this is something that you should definitely check it out. So join me at the table. I'm going to add the links in the description of the video and timestamps, so you can go directly and jump per chapter what you want to see and find out from the whole rule set, which I'm going to be very thorough. And then join me at the end of this video for some final wrap-up about the game.
In ancient times, a grand tournament was held to find the most powerful elemental mage. The victorious mage reigned until the end of the next tournament, and the duels themselves created Ether, the substance that was vital to the existence of the land above the moon, a fabled sphere where mages themselves were born and regenerated. The dueling field is itself magical. It flows and changes, requiring skills and crafty mages in order to control it. The aim of the game is to win such a duel by playing a mage and controlling an army of minions. So let's familiarize ourselves first of all with the components of the game. This game comes in a very small box, but it has a lot of contents. So this is a prototype again, as you can see, but it's an advanced prototype, so everything looks gorgeous. The art is phenomenal, it's very unique and fresh. Even the insert, as you can see, is beautiful, really beautiful. So let's see first of all the components of the game. We have various things included in this package. First of all, you can see that we have lots of cards. These are on the top row and the second row, the battle decks. We have 10 combat cards, 2 decks, 1 for each player, 1 red and 1 blue. Then we have also 10 player markers for each of the player colors. We also have this hole marker, which is a special marker linked with one specific card. Then we have various two-sided cards. We have the elemental masters, and we have also the elemental power cards. And here below you can see the 9 two-sided power explosion cards, and the same goes for the large two-sided board, which has 2 sides, one 4x4, which is played in 3 of the 4 modes, and one 3x3, which is used for training or playing with younger players. So also the cards, as you can see, this link with this specific side of the board. You can use them as a 3x3 side or as a 4x4 side respectively. And everything falls under this category. Also, you have this small card, which is a 2-sided representation of the board, and it's really nice because if you want, you can pack everything without the box, without the board, in one zip bag with one bunch of cards, and that's it. You can take the game practically everywhere with you, and you only need a surface to play it on the table. These are the mages. There are 4 two-sided cards of the elemental masters. Actually, these are the elemental masters. This is one of the variants that the game can be played with. It has 2 sides with 2 different abilities, and they're used in the elemental masters variant. They have beautiful art, as you can see, and as I mentioned, the ability in each side is different. This game is very unique in terms of table presence and aesthetics, and everything looks gorgeous. So far, very much impressed with the components, especially whatever is in front of your screen is packed in this small box and makes a difference. So let's move to the core of the game. As you can see, there are 4 different ways to play the game. We have the training, which is a class of minds, quick and precise. You win by your wits and cunning alone. This mode is perfect to master the key mechanics of the game. It's recommended for when you start the game or when you play with younger kids. You then have the Mage Duel. You try it after your training is complete. It's time to use your full powers. And this is the first, let's say, mode out of the 4, which brings more mechanics in the game. The training is fairly simple, just to get the basics. You also have 3rd mode, which is the elemental battle. For when a single elemental power is not enough, access to the full might of the 4 elements. As your powers grow, so does the playing field and the rows. And the last mode that you have is a tournament where you assert your dominance over 5 rounds, you go above and beyond the playing field, you fight on the arena, and you win the land above the moon. So you play with a grid of cards, and then you also, depending on the play that you win, you add a marker on the battlefield that I showed you, the one on the right, the 4x4 or 3x3 side. So this is extremely, I would say, flexible, because it offers 4 different ways to play the game, and you can start either by the training, or you can dive directly in the Mage Duel if you are experienced already. But it's recommended to start for your first play from the training, because you'll see the basic mechanics of the game. Now, every player should start with the training mode. This is what the publisher is recommending, which is a fast-paced duel perfect for learning the basic rules. And then you can move to the training, to the Mage dueling mode. Now, let's see now the training mode. The training mode is the first way to play the game. You just use basically the simple decks of cards, the combat cards. Per player, you get 1 card of value 2 and 1 card of value 3. And the rest of the cards that you see below, 1 card 2, 1 card 3, and the Eter card are returned to the box. For both players, you don't want those. You just want the cards that you see on the top of the screen. The training mode is intended to show you the basic rules used in all other game modes, and each player should have finally a deck of 7 combat cards with values of 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and 4. And this will be the player's hand for the game. Okay, these cards that I show you just now. The mages send scores of minions to fight in their name. They can send between 1 and 4 minions at the same time, which is represented by the value of the cards they play. So this is their hand, the combat card. Each player takes their hand, the combat deck in their hand, secretly from the other players, and they're going to be altering turns, playing cards in the battlefield. So for the training mode, you play on a 3x3 grid between the 2 players, the 2 mages, okay? And simply you just place cards. So after selecting the first player in any way you see fit, the players alternate playing 1 combat card from their hand into the spaces on the playing field to create a line. The line can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. Now, let's see the combat card placement rules. A combat card on the playing field must always, during the whole game, touch at least one of the other cards. Corner to corner is okay. So basically, each player takes their hand of cards. Okay, I'm just laying them here so that you can see them. But keep in mind that these cards are held by the players secretly. Okay, and then they start altering playing cards. Now, as I mentioned, I go first. Let's say the blue player goes first. I'm placing a card, so I start the playing field. For the first placement, there is no specific rule. You just start by playing a card that you desire in the center between the 2 players. After that, a combat card is played always touching one of the other cards on the battlefield. So it has to be either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. A card of a higher value power also may cover cards of lower value. You do not remove the cover cards from the playing field. They create a stack, and you may cover both cards of your own color, but also of the enemy. So let me show you quickly here. Let's say that the red player starts playing. Then I'm following by placing at least touching one side. I could also touch a corner if I wanted. Okay, then the second player goes, then the red player goes again, and they follow this rule. As cards are added, then the grid is played. Now, by this placement now, I locked the 3x3 grid, because that means if I placed it there, I still haven't locked it, or here, but here is also locked from the other side, as you can see. So at some point, the grid, if you're playing a training mode 3x3, or if you're playing all the rest of the modes 4x4, it's going to be locked, no matter if it's filled or not with cards. Okay, but until that happens, players have flexibility to determine what is the grid that players are going to be played, cards are going to be played on. Now, for the training mode, the playing field cannot extend beyond 3x3 cards, horizontally, vertically, but players, as I said, they will play cards, and this will actually force the shape and the location of the cards. So diagonal, as I mentioned, is also allowed, so you can place cards diagonally. Okay, and this is going back and forth until a player is able to make an uninterrupted line of 3 cards of their color, either by diagonal, horizontal or vertical. Again, very important that you can cover cards with higher strength cards, either your own color or your opponent's color. Obviously, your opponent's colors makes more sense, by playing higher value cards. They have to be higher value, not equal, okay? So if you have a card which is lower value or equal, it cannot cover another card. But if you have a card that it's higher value than the card that you're intending to cover, then that's allowed and that's okay. Okay, so a 3 cannot cover a 3, but a 4 can cover a 3, a 2, a 1, for example. Okay, and then you don't remove the cards, you just prepare them on a stack. Okay, so the card which is on top is also what is visible. It's always what is visible and dictates the color of the whole stack for winning purposes of creating the line. But keep that in mind, because it could be through abilities later on with the other modes that these cards can also be removed, or the whole stack can be affected and repositioned, etc. Okay, so this is important. So the end of the game ends immediately after one of the players manages to create a horizontal, vertical or diagonal line, as I've already told you, consisting of only of his or her cards. This can include stacks, but the winning player's card has to be on top. Okay, that player then is the winner. If the player fails to create an unbroken line, then the game continues back and forth between the players by altering turns and playing cards one at a time. And the whole playing field, 3x3 or 4x4, is filled. One player has, this is pre-decided before you start the game, if you're going to play 3x3 or 4x4, even in the training mode. One player plays this last card when they create the winning combination, the line, the interrupted line, and then that dictates essentially the win. In case the players fail, as I said, to create an unbroken line, one player will play their last card, and in both cases the opponent can play one more card, and then the game ends. And in case of a draw, the sum of the value of all visible cards in a given color, the number of the minions on the playing field, is important. We count only the visible cards, so not the ones below a stack. All illusions are worth 1. You'll see later on what illusion means. The player with the highest total wins. When using the training mode, you have to ensure that you play until a player acquires 2 wins. So you need to take 2 wins out of the plays that you're going to have. So you're going to play either 2 or 3 plays, and out of these, one side is going to take 2 wins. When this happens, then the game ends, and in case of a draw, you'll proceed to the 3rd play. Otherwise, if you already acquired 2 wins, then the game is over. These are all the basic rules. So when you know them, you can practice them, you can play with them, and then you can advance into the remaining modes of play, let's say. So now let's talk about the special plays, as they're called. And you can use the below special plays in all game modes, even in the training mode. First of all, we have the illusion. Mages are quite sneaky, and sometimes they hide their true intentions. Once per play, a player may play his card face down, this is the illusion, without revealing its value. Okay? So, an illusion is always played face down. You cannot cover your own face down card with any of your other cards, and such a face down card is still takes place as part of a line. Okay, so it's still considered to be a combat card, let's say, and it forms a valid, let's say, winning line. So you can use it in theory as one of the cards out of the 3 or 4, depending if you play 3x3 or 4x4, to make a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal uninterrupted line of your own color to win the game. So it's a combat card by all means. If the opponent tries to cover your face down card, you reveal the face down card, and if the opponent card is higher than the till recently face down card, cover the newly revealed card with your own card. If the opponent's card is of equal value or higher, or if it is weaker, then you just have to put it back and remove it from the game. You cannot use it again for this game, and then the revealed card stays revealed face up for the rest of the play. A very important note is that different mage and elemental powers that we'll find out about later in this video can impact the illusion. So this is important. Also, the illusion may be discarded from the playing field, returned to its owner hand, moved, or sometimes even covered. Some powers give you this option. So the power, this is the illusions. It's a very tactical way to use card. You can play cards, so you can bluff yourself. You can just play a small value card or play a high value card. So in this case, let's say the blue player is prepared to reveal it, so reveals the illusion. It's a 2, so that means that they were successful. But if they had a 2 or a 1, that means that they would not be successful and they would remove their own card out of the game for display. Okay, so you're trying to outguess your opponent. You can also use a bluff, which is very important, especially when you're trying to make them spend some high value cards if you used an illusion of a low value card of your own, and so on. But it's also very a clever way to misdirect your opponent in order to spend their cards, let's say. In any case, the illusion can be used, as I mentioned, with various modes. Okay, but you can once you play an illusion, then you have to keep it face down until an opponent tries to reveal it by playing a card on top of that, and hopefully trying to win it. Okay, but the important note is also that you can only do that once per play. You can use an illusion once per play, so you cannot have a second illusion. Okay, only one illusion can be played, and that's important. So now let's move to the second special play, which is the Power Explosion, which uses this deck of cards. The Power Explosion is a giant shift on the playing field, resulting in retreat. Some cards can be returned to their owner's hand, or loss of minions. Cards are removed from play. They can really turn the situation around and create new strategies. You have to consider their pros and cons before using them, or you can just shake things up. To include Power Explosion in the game, you take the Power Explosion cards, you turn them all to the appropriate side, either on the 3x3 on the training mode, which is the basic mode, or on the other modes on the 4x4 grid. You shuffle them and you put them on a stack next to the playing field. The top card is then visible. After every game, the top card of the Power Explosion deck should be removed from the game. The Power Explosion cards will change the playing field when activated. They may be activated when one of the mages fills the second full line on the playing field. Depending on the game mode, this can be a line of 3 or 4 cards. The lines may be horizontal or vertical. Okay, so whenever you fill the second line, like in any of the examples I'm showing you now, you are the mage that you are allowed to use the Power Explosion. Just to be perfectly frank, this is something that you can do optionally, because it may not be something fitting your strategy. The Power Explosion cards will change the playing field when activated. They may be activated when one of the mages fills the second line, okay? And the player who fills the second line decides if they want to cause a Power Explosion. They also choose how the Power Explosion will be orientated on the playing field. It can be freely rotated so that they have a maximum impact, and choose which spaces of the playing field will be impacted in this way. A single Power Explosion card can be used per game. This can be modified by elemental powers. This means that the player who fills the second line can choose if the explosion happens or not, and then removes the Power Explosion card from the game. If the condition of the Power Explosion is fulfilled for the second time during one game, there is no second explosion. The explosion impacts cards in 2 ways. It turns cards to its owner's hand when you have the hand symbol, or it removes cards from play when they have the discard symbol you see on the second row. Again, you can rotate it freely as you best see fit, based on your strategy. When the cards are returned to their owner's hands, the first should be moved next to the playing field. Only after one player's turn of a given player can it be taken into the hand and used further in the game. The card that is removed from the game is removed from the game until the end of the current game. The explosion cannot result in a situation that breaks away the always touching rule related to cards in the playing field. If a Power Explosion would result in a card not touching any other card, such effect of Power Explosion is ignored. The connecting card is not removed from the game, nor returned to its owner hand. All the other fields impacted by Power Explosion should be resolved normally. If you like a bit more predictability, so you can play with the rule that the Power Explosion is always activated and always happens when the condition that triggers it are met. This means that the player who caused the explosion does not decide about launching it or not, and only chooses a card layout, a rotation, and that shows which pieces on the battlefield are affected. Again, so be careful about the hand, which dictates that the cards are returned to the owner's hand, or the square with the X and the arrow, which stands that it are removed from the play. Now, as you can see, this is very interesting, because based on the rotation you can impact, of course, a lot the playing field. You're trying to do so with a maximum impact against your opponent. In case of stacks of combats, keep in mind that Power Explosion impacts only the topmost card. All the cards below the topmost card remain in place, so this is also something important to consider, because you may remove a card of your opponent, but you don't know what's beneath, or you have to remember at least. Also, decreasing the size of the playing field, removal of the only combat card on the edge of the playing field will unlock the grid, and then the players may extend the playing field as they see fit from the other side, following the 3x3 or 4x4 rule. Okay, so they're not forced to go from the same side if they want to. Now, there are 3 special explosion cards in the set, and that they use the hole special rule. This hole is the hole marker, and it will create a specific impact on the playing field. They create a unique space on the playing field when this special hole marker is used. Okay, and they make a lot of interesting decisions, because they impact it in a specific way that it dictates that you cannot add more cards on this field. Now, again, various things can happen when cards are removed or impacted, and you have to be mindful that you cannot break away the rule, the always touching rule. Okay, again, once you activated the Power Explosion card, you remove it from the game. Okay, and of course you decide with the normal rules if it makes sense to use it or not. So these are the basic rules about the Power Explosion cards. This is, as I said, a module that you can use either with the illusion or without the illusion, and you can use it in the training mode, in all the different modes. There is no rule that dictates that you cannot use both of them, and actually it's much more fun if you master all the rules and you use both of them in the game. Right, so the only thing I forgot to mention in detail is how the let's say the manhole rule applies. These cards that they have, the 3 Power Explosion cards that I mentioned before, that they have the special hole rule, they create a unique space on the playing field, the titular hole, and they use this marker that I just showed you to mark the space on the playing field. Let's see where they are. This is the icon, okay, or this is the icon. This is the 3x3 side. And you also have it on the back, on the 4x4 side, and this marker is going to be placed on the designated space on the Power Explosion card after deciding the rotation, of course, based on the rules that we described before. And once you place this marker there, if there are cards there, they're going to be removed from play. So it's like a massive explosion. It will make the cards that they touch, or the stack of cards, disappear. Okay. Until the end of the game, this marker is going to stay there, so no player can play any cards onto the whole space. The whole space cannot be affected by the Mage powers, the Elemental powers, or the Power Explosions. So you can understand that this creates an additional strategy in the game, because a specific portion of the grid is going to be locked, and once this is done, then no more cards. First of all, a lot of cards may be removed due to this the initial placement, but also no more cards will be able to be placed on this specific spot. So that's how the 3 special Power Explosion cards that have this card work. Okay, so again, this is an example of now how we can go into the Mage Duel mode. So this mode extends the rules of the training mode in 2 ways. The player field is larger, so you use a 4x4 grid instead of a 3x3. We're talking about the second option to play the game as a Mage Duel mode. Okay. The winning condition is different. The winning line needs to be 4 cards long, again, horizontal, diagonal, or vertical. Additional cards are added. Each player adds to its cards 1, 2, 1, 3, and for the final composition of 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4. and also the Eter card. So this is going to be the Eter card that is going to be with the icon of the Eter card, and the Eter card now cannot be covered from other cards. So this is a specific rule of the Eter card. The Eter card cannot be covered. Also, it is not impacted by mage or elemental powers. And finally, its value always ties as 1. Now, before every game, players randomly draw one of the 4 double-sided mage cards. Every card represents a different element, and its sides have different mage powers. These are the 4 double-sided mage cards that I described before, and these are going to be used in the mage dueling mode. This is the Eter card, just to show you, I didn't show you before the icon, okay, which is the one part of your combat deck essentially now, and it can also give you an additional flexibility and option because it cannot be covered and cannot be affected, and also its value is also always 1, so they're not very strong in that way, but at least they are a beacon of stability because they cannot be affected by other cards covering them. Now back to the 4 double-sided mage cards. These are the 4 double-sided mage cards that are used in the mage dueling mode. These are the ones that we've seen during the component breakdown. Okay, they're double-sided, as you can see. It's recommended at the beginning of the exploration phase of the game, players choose one of the 2 mages of a given element. Each card is double-sided. That means that they have 2 different powers. They choose the side of the drawn card, and in time, players will get to randomly draw their powers. They do not flip the drawn card over. An important note is that the mage power can be used once per game. For example, 2 or 3 plays or 5 plays in the tournament mode. The remaining rules stay the same, including the option to use special powers like illusion and power explosion as we described below. Each mage may utilize a special power once per play. Using a mage power takes a whole turn. That means that no card is played if a mage decides to use her powers unless his ability says otherwise. It's a very strong card, so that's why it takes a whole turn, and that's why you can only decide to play it instead of a normal combat card. Now, it's time to meet the mages. The mages are 8 in total. We have 4 cards, double-sided. So each card has 2 sides, as you can see. So first of all, we have the Masters of Fire, Burn, which is those 2 mages. So this side, you remove from play an opponent's card that covers one of your cards. And this is a symbol that it explains how it works. Okay, everything is also described in the rulebook, so you can find all these icons easily, and you don't have to memorize them. And from the back of the side, you remove from play a row or column of 3 or more cards. The removed row or column must contain at least one of your cards, and the power impacts single cards and stacks. Okay, so this is important to note. So these are the Masters of Fire, let's say. Masters of Air, Blown Away. So this side, on this turn, the player may move his card or stack of cards with his card on top to different empty space, and from that side, you use your mage power cards as an additional Eter card, and you place it on an empty space on the playing field with your marker. So very, very interesting ability. Then we have the Masters of Earth, Bury. On this side, you cover an opponent's card with your card of a lower value. Very useful ability, extremely useful when the timing is right. It can have a huge impact. Okay, and from that side, the chosen empty space on the playing field becomes a hole. No mage can play any cards there. No mage powers or power explosions may affect that space, and you mark it with this mage power card on the hole, or the hole marker, which is used in the power explosion deck, if not already used in the game. So very interesting ability, and creates also additional opportunities. And last but not least, we have the Masters of Water, Boat. On this side, you take any row or column of 3 or more cards at the edge of the playing field and move it to a different edge. This defines the shape of the playing field and redefines it essentially. And from this side, you have the ability that on his turn, the mage may move an opponent's card or stack of cards with an opponent card to a different empty space as well. So very useful ability also. And some general notes on the use of the mage powers. They cannot break, they must always be touching rule for cards on the playing field. This also applies here. They may be used as long as you have any cards left in your hand. If you have no cards, it triggers final scoring, so you cannot use it at the end of the deck if you have played all the combat cards. And also, they do not affect the Eter card and can be used once per play. So, these are the mages, the special abilities, and of course, as you can understand, they create a lot of opportunities. So now, let's see the next mode that we have, the third mode of the game, the elemental battle mode. The rules of this mode include the rules introduced in the Mage Duel mode, but you also have this deck of cards. You use the elemental powers instead of the mage powers. This deck of cards instead of the mage powers. You shuffle all the elemental power cards and draw 2 of them. You place these cards next to the playing field, in easy reach of the players, and these cards are available to be used once per play as an action. After using a given elemental card, it should be placed face down, and it's no longer available during the play. Use them quickly before your opponent does. An important note is that you should draw 2 new elemental powers for every play and remove the old ones from the game. General notes on using those elemental powers. Using elemental powers cannot break, they must always be touching rule for the cards on the playing field, like we've seen so far. When the cards are returned to the owner's hand, they first should be moved next to the playing field. Only after one player's turn of a given player, they can take it from the side and use it further in the game. And the card that is removed from the game is removed from the game until the end of the current game. When using elemental power, the effect is immediate. For example, if it says play a card, you have to play the card immediately. If using a power is impossible, that you cannot use this card. The Eter card is not impacted by elemental powers, and some elemental cards allow you to have an additional card. There is a full list of the elemental cards, so you don't have to memorize anything. Everything is explained in the back of the rulebook, and every card is specifically described how it can be used. As you can see here, this is the elemental power card list, which has all the cards explained in detail. So very, very, very useful. Now let's see the final mode of the game, which is the tournament mode. This mode is different from the other modes because it uses a special battle arena board, the one that you see in front of you. The main game follows the same rules of the chosen other modes, training, mage, duel, elemental battle, but includes 5 subsequent plays. Every time one of the player creates a winning line, the last card placed, the winning card, indicates the space on the battle arena where the winning player places his or her marker. If you have any markers on that space, you just add it to the previous ones. If there is one player's marker on that space, you replace it with your own marker. If there are more than one opponent player markers on that space, replace one of them with your own marker. So the game is played, as you can see, in 2 different, let's say, mini games. You have the main game where you're still making a 4x4 battle, as we've seen before. But when you win a game, like in this case with this diagonal, I placed this blue card and created this diagonal. This final winning card dictates where I'm going to place a token of my color in the battle board arena. So you see, I won by placing this blue one card here. So let me show you up close. So I have to place one of my markers there. So this is important because not only you're trying to win place, but you're also have in mind what happens in the battle arena on the side. Because this is, for example, if I won a second game with the same winning location card there, I'm going to add a second card there. Okay. If it was an opponent card, I would remove the opponent card, opponent token, and one of mine. Okay. If I had more, I'm just simply going to add more. That's it. So the placement of the card that finishes a winning line is extremely important, as it will determine the battle arena space where the marker will be placed. Sometimes you have more than one option to create a winning line. If the hit occurs before the playing field is determined, so if it is impossible, so let's say it's impossible to decide which space to use, the winning player decides that the final layout would be and where they're going to be placing the winning marker on the battle arena. Okay, because let's say the grid was not fixed, like in this case, so you cannot pinpoint directly where you should put your winning card, your winning token on the battlefield arena. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to make an uninterrupted line of 3 of your markers on the battlefield arena throughout the 5 plays of the game. Or if you don't manage to do that, then by the end of the 5 plays, whoever has the most markers of their color on the battleboard arena, they win the game. So in case of a draw, you calculate the total value of your visible cards, and the players with a higher total sum wins. In such a case, the winning chooses a space on the battlefield arena, and then they place their marker respectively. If there is a tie in the values of the cards, no marker is placed, and then the tie during the last and 5th tournament of the play will create the need for an additional tie-breaking play. Okay? The tournament is won by the player who creates a line of 3 markers, horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. 3 markers are enough. They don't need 4 on the battleboard arena. Don't mix that. Even if playing Mage, Duel, or Elemental Battle, this ends the tournament, or has more markers on the battle arena at the end of the tournament. So there are some play recommendations. Once you get to know the game, it's suggested that you play, let's say, the pure tournament. You play using the training mode. For example, training mode rules, 3x3 playing field, hands of 5 cards, no additional powers. This is a purely logical game with no randomized elements. You can play Total Brawl, combine the Mage, Duel, and Elemental Battle. This means that the player will have a chance to use either his Mage power or Elemental power once per game. There are no additional rule changes, and you remember that you have 1 Mage power for the whole game, and that 2 new Elemental powers will be drawn for each play. And if you want to play with, let's say, a child below 8 years or something around that, then you can do, because even kids of 5 or 6 years can play the game in the training mode, which is very simple, a 3x3 grid, by playing cards with numerical values. In time, you should add illusions and later power explosions after you can run a tournament, and it's recommended to leave Mage, Duel, and Elemental battles for last when playing with children. So these are the play recommendations. Once you have the opportunity to go through your training, then you can gradually start adding the elements of the latter, let's say, modes of play. Again, training mode, followed by Mage Duel mode, followed by Elemental Battle mode, and finally the tournament mode, which is the full-fledged game as it was designed and was meant to. In addition, I remind you that you can add the 2 special plays, the power explosion and the illusion, at any of the modes of the game, and that's it. That's how you play the game. And that's everything you need to know on how to play Eter.
So there you have it. This is Eter. I think it's one of those games that they're going to stay in everyone's collection, from those who find out about the game, discover the game, and take it for their library. The reason is very simple. It builds on a very, very basic design, which is a tic-tac-toe. And if you told me, let's play a game about tic-tac-toe, I would be hesitating, saying, okay, it's too simple for me, I'm not interested. But if you go beyond that and you try the game, then you're going to be surprised. Because the game really delivers a lot of fun, a lot of tension, a lot of interesting choices, and it just keeps, I would say, the DNA, the idea of tic-tac-toe. And then on top of that, they build so many cool, simple, but interesting and deep little things that they give a lot and lot of replayability and a lot of interesting choices. I'm particularly surprised how easy, at least it looks easy to me, but how interesting the result is of taking something so simple like the tic-tac-toe mechanism and make a game out of it, make an interesting game out of it with a lot of options and a lot of interesting decisions. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not your heavy game in any of the modes. It's interesting, it's strategic, it has meaningful choices, but it's fast, simple, and it will not welcome its play. It will not overstay its welcome, let me put it like that. It's exactly what you want for a quick filler, for some fast gaming back and forth, with interesting decisions and very, very memorable gaming experience. The art is gorgeous, it's very different, it's very unique, it gives you the idea of 2 mages battling each other with their minions on the battlefield, etc. But the play is so simple and so fast that you just simply play a card, the opponent plays a card, so boom, 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 there you go. The final conclusion of the first match is there. So you need to win 2 matches in order to win, let's say, the tournament mode, but the training mode or the mage mode or the elemental battle mode, but you need to play 5 battles, and whoever has the most will win in the tournament mode. Now, tournament mode is a whole new level, because it has all the, let's say, the goodness of all the previous modes, but it's like playing a second mini game, which is very much connected, because you're thinking not only to win this specific match, but also where you're going to place your final winning card, if you are the winner, because there you're going to add on the separate battlefield, again on a tic-tac-toe mechanism with the battlefield arena, one of your counters. And whoever tries to make either a line of 3 in the second battlefield arena wins the game, or by the end of the 5 matches, whoever has the most tokens on the battlefield arena wins. So very, very interesting. And you can also kick out markers of your opponent on the battlefield arena if you place one and your opponent has one there. So very interesting, very clever, and in parallel very satisfying, with just enough as a gameplay as you would expect from such a game, a quick card play with simple mechanisms in the core, but with a lot of fun and a lot of interesting decisions. So there you have it. This is Eter. I highly recommend that you check it out, especially if you like quick, fast play two-player games with cards, with simple rules that you can teach to anybody, but also that it brings you a bit of spice, enough to keep it, to make it, you know, memorable, to make it a happy addition to your library, and to want to pick it up from the shelf and have it a go with anyone coming for game night at your home. So there you have it. This is Eter. Check it out.